Okay, I don't have anything on go here, so we'll go ahead and get started. We appreciate everybody turning out. Just a couple of things before we get into the agenda, so you will know, if you haven't seen the agenda, we'll have our own silent prayer, pledge of allegiance, with a couple of comments, with our recognitions by the board, and then we will have the presentation of the redesigned square, and then we will recess for about 5 to 10 minutes, give you those of you who would like to leave that time, so it won't be disrupted, okay? So we'll go ahead and begin tonight. If you'll join me for a moment of silent prayer. And if you will, we join me for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
And to the republic which stands one nation under God, liberty and justice for all. We'll begin public comments at this moment as soon as I get to this. Okay, under normal circumstances, we give 3 minutes for each speaker, due to the fact that one group has a large number of people here, and they're going to have really just 2 speakers. We will allow a little longer time to one of those speakers. Okay. So we'll begin, and as you come forward, please make sure you give us your name and address. Is that speaker already on? Is the mic already on?
I'll turn it over to Jay.
Okay, first on the list is David Green.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Commissioners, I'm David Green. I live at 130 City Grove Road in Providence, North Carolina. Last December, I was told by Commissioner Bay that no one had really come forward and voiced opposition to moving the Confederate Memorial at Owen Square. So we organized a group of people and we got petitions and turned in over 1,100 names to y'all in opposition to moving the statue. But what we mostly want to remember is that the statue is a memorial to those who fought and to those who fought and died, especially to those who died. Back then, most soldiers who died in the battlefield were very bad. And those soldiers didn't have an opportunity to come home and be buried in gathered soil. So it's a remembrance to those soldiers. And taking it down and moving it would be against the law. The way y'all are proposing to put it from y'all service. Y'all don't want to violate the law anymore than I do. So we're asking you tonight to consider what you're doing. Taking away a memorial to those who died, and taking away a memorial to the people of this county. We're asking you that you decide tonight to vote not to remove the statue on the square. And if I would ask everyone who is in favor of my position to not move the statue, please stand. If you would, we'd like to turn this over to let him take the time, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And Phillips, since you are speaking to the group, I am going to give you 9 minutes. That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm glad that I'm here to speak to you. I appreciate the opportunity to do so this evening. Years ago, a World War II veteran called me to tell me how my cousin died in combat fighting the Nazis. He said, well, Mr. Phillips, I don't know where to start, but let me start here. And I think that's good enough. I'm going to start here. Civil War is the most complex war ever fought, and the bloodiest war ever fought by this nation. It's nuanced. It's horrific. There are so many issues that were fought over. Men on both sides died over it. My great-great-grandfathers, 2 men from East Tennessee, all fought for the Union. I do have a 3rd great-grandfather and uncles and cousins who fought in the Confederate Army. Brother against brother, son against son, son against father, uncle against nephew. That's how complicated this war is. And I can tell you, from personal experience, that there's a lot of soul searching for anybody who can trace their ancestry to that war on both sides. But as complicated as the war is, the law is not. North Carolina General Statute 100-2.1, which a number of people call the Migrant Protection Act and others call the Heritage Protection Act. That law applies to political subdivisions of the state. I know there are those who say it does not. And here's what we have in this state. We have 2 of the state's highest courts dealing with this issue. And if I were to tell you anything, I would tell you to put the brakes on, because the Supreme Court of the state of North Carolina and the Court of Appeals are going to speak on this issue. And in particular, what's before both of those courts are the following issues. What groups have standing to bring these actions against the state of North Carolina or political subdivisions of the state of North Carolina? Who can bring a lawsuit? Who is an aggrieved party? Also, the question that's really teed up too is, does this law apply to political subdivisions of the state? Or does it only apply to the state of North Carolina and property owned by the state of North Carolina? So those are the issues in a nutshell. I mean, there are several sub-issues and it's a lot more complicated, but suffice it to say, where we are is here. I've been involved in the monument issue for 4 years in Tennessee and North Carolina and Kentucky. And what I can tell you from that experience is as follows. The statute itself under subsection A talks about property, objects of remembrance, memorials, monuments, plaques, etc., that are owned by the state and on state property. So the state, it says under that subdivision, subsection A, that statute says, the state itself has to go to the North Carolina Historical Commission and ask them for permission to move one. And then it says, the exceptions set forth in subsection B. In subsection B, it's really important to understand and note that the law says objects of remembrance on public property. So at first it defines objects of remembrance owned by the state, right? And what duties the state has. And then it says on public property. And if you look under subsection B, under one of the exceptions, it talks about political subdivisions of the state. So why in the world would the legislature they specify the state in the beginning, then go into public property, and then within that same subsection, mention political subdivisions of the state and political subdivisions of the state. They mention both because subsection B and subsection C apply to both. There is an argument under subsection A that subsection A actually applies to counties and municipalities as well, that they would have to seek permission of the North Carolina Historical Commission. That issue is also before the North Carolina Supreme Court. And how the issues got before the Supreme Court is as follows. Back in 2019, the city of Winston-Salem caused a monument to be taken down at the former Forsyth County Courthouse. The county reserved an easement. They had sold the property. It became private property, but there's an easement where all the monuments were covered. World War I, World War II, the Civil War monument, et cetera. Plaques and a time capsule. So that issue before the Supreme Court, it comes down to this. There was a majority opinion that said the law doesn't apply. These folks, the United Daughters Confederacy, don't have standing. And oh, by the way, this is it, we're done. Judge Tyson dissented. So the United Daughters of the Confederacy, the UDC, is on appeal as of right. They can't be kicked out of the Supreme Court because it was wrongly filed or it's they're the wrong party or some other technical reason that it's not in good order, et cetera. They are there because of right. The Supreme Court of this state will decide this issue once and for all. And I think if we rush to judgment and we rush to take action, we might find ourselves in a tight spot. And that brings me up to another case that's before the Court of Appeals. That's a case I represent, the 26th North Carolina, their Historical Preservation Society. And we sued the city of Winston-Salem and we sued Buncombe County. So the Superior Court, our case was dismissed. I filed a notice of appeal, brought it up immediately to the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And in that case, I filed an emergency motion to stop the city of Asheville from taking down Banks Monument. And I was going to file a writ for supersedious, which is an extraordinary writ, basically, which would put everything in stay during the pendency of the appeal, based on certain legal facts and arguments. Now, what the court did was they said, okay, we're going to deny the emergency motion. However, city of Asheville, we're going to give you an opportunity to file a response. If you don't file a response, the time that you have to file a response, when it lapses, we're going to issue an order. And on June 4th of this year, 2021, the Court of Appeals forbade the city of Asheville from taking any further action to demolish, destroy, or remove the Vance Monument, or what was left of it, or what is left of it, from Pack Square Park in downtown Asheville. The city then filed a request that my nonprofit client be held as surety for the city to post a bond. I filed my response. The Court of Appeals denied the request by the city for the bond. It's a situation they created. When I filed the appeal, I told the city and its attorneys, I told the county and their attorneys that I have filed this appeal. My clients have not exhausted their appellate remedies that are before them, and we're seeking an emergency motion. But yet they proceeded and they ran down the clock. And they almost succeeded destroying the whole monument. However, taking the monument apart was complicated. And what's interesting, city council member Kilgore, an African-American woman, when she was told by the city attorney that, well, there are forces here that are going to take down this 75-foot obelisk. We know they're going to do it. They're going to bring block and tackle here and take down this monument. It's a safety concern. Well, the statute doesn't apply to safety concerns unless the monument itself is decaying and falling apart and has reached the end of its useful life, right? And a building inspector under the law has said, yes, this monument's had it. That wasn't the case in North Carolina, in Asheville, North Carolina. So what it comes down to is this. She said to the city attorney, don't insult my intelligence. And then on top of that, sir, if we take this monument down, we are going to hurt the relationships between the African-American and the white community in the city of Asheville and in Buncombe County. So with the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court taking action, and they will take action, the briefs have been filed in the Supreme Court, and on top of that, they will be heard, oral argument will be heard in probably October or November, and decision will come from the Supreme Court. So what I'm asking, what I'm begging you is, please do not take action until we know from the state's highest courts where all this goes. I think that's prudent. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Sir, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, sir.
Give your name. With you.
I apologize. It's H. Edward Phillips. I'm an attorney at law. I'm here. I'm licensed in the state of North Carolina. I'm licensed in Tennessee and before the United States Supreme Court. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Chairman, commissioners, thank you.
It's very important, folks, so I'll do the best I can. But my name is Jerry Sykes. I live on 806 Alice Barber Road in Yanceyville. I think if you take that statue down, you dishonor hundreds of thousands of men, hundreds of thousands. Many of them were teenagers, and a lot of them went to war because they were told to go to war. That's what they were told to do, and that's what they did. I think it's, my opinion, I think it's a disgrace and really when you're talking about taking the money for that. I just wonder, y'all up there, how you feel with 300,000 mothers of those fallen soldiers were huge, 300,000 more. Tell them, and you tell them that you're going to dishonor their sons. Taking that money but down. I hope all you make a decision that you've educated yourself about these men, who they were, what age they were, what they did. Because they were doing what they were told to do. A lot of times they were poor. They didn't know they were doing what they were told to do. So I think it's very important when you make a decision that you educate yourself exactly why and who these men were. Some people say they're offended by the money. There's a lot of things that people are offended by. I'm offended by a lot of things. I'm offended when I go down the highway and I stop at a gas station. And I've done this many times, and probably everybody has. And you're there getting gas and a car pulls up beside of you. Person gets out of the car and goes inside, leaves the car sitting there running or off with a radio blaring wide open, and you're sitting listening there to a bunch of screaming profanity. Rap music, they call it, some of it. And it's talking about degrading women, and in some cases, hurting policemen. I think that's a disgrace. I'm offended by that. I'm offended when I go down the road and go by my church and I see beer cans and liquor bottles thrown in the churchyard. I'm offended by that. We need to be talking about stuff like that. I think we need to get away from all this nonsense. It's all it's doing is dividing this country more and more every day. I'm 70 years old. I never thought I'd see our country go down like we've seen it. The division has come about in this country. I think it's a shame. Just tearing down statues and all that stuff is just a total disgrace.
Thank you. Sorry, I cannot make out this last name, Jeff. McGee, I'm sorry.
City Council, board members, my name is Jeff McGee, I reside at 4121 Old NC Highway 86 North. Number one, I'm a veteran. Yeah, my great grandfather was a veteran, Federal Army. And of all states, North Carolina, that statute should remain. Now, I know you expect people of Castle County to abide by the law and, the laws. Well, that's the law. And keep on giving on into this cancel culture. They're going to come up and take in-government trust off this building. And then they're going to go down the street and they're going to want to take that memorial down the street. I'm telling you, it's coming. I'm just saying, in God's name, let us leave money for our history, for all the ancestors, and everybody who fought the Confederacy in the United States of America. I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Next, I believe it's Clark or Daniel.
Thank you. Member of the city council. I'm an outsider, I'm from down, but I said that. I do have ancestors that,
Yes, sir, if you will introduce yourself first, please. Introduce yourself.
my name is Ed Clark, I'm from Danville, Virginia, and I'm a concerned citizen of the South. I'm tired of my ancestors having these plastic honor fingers pointing at my ancestors, saying things that they did wrong, but yet they won't admit their own sins. If you just wonder who in the world boarded those ships with slaves. They were Africans, they were slaves before they left there. When I hear that my ancestors did not own slaves and they went off war, entirely different. The people that yelled the loudest against Southern symbols know the least about the history. That's why for the last 25 years, I've studied this subject, learned a lot of things. I'm proud of my ancestors, and I'm here in defense of that monument. I want the truth told, not a New England Yankee lie or an African lie. I'm tired of it. Let that monument stay there. The truth will rise out of the ground again. As President Davis said, think about it real hard, what you're doing. And the people who want these monuments now, Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao would be darn proud of it. Keep that monument there. Thank you.
Could you hold just a minute? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, the Commissioners. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Ron Spears. I'm actually from Pennsylvania County. For supervisors up here. And someone from the community asked me to come speak to you guys today, give you some insight on what we went through. One thing we have a statute that memorializes the people who sacrificed all during the Civil War. And like you, we also get a lot of pressure from people to take the statute down. And things are important to realize is one, the statute was part of our history. And like your statute, it does not glorify war. It honors the people who sacrificed all for their country at the time. As a 22-year veteran of the Air Force, a disabled veteran, it involves me that you would even think of this honoring of those men who done. I'm succinctly aware of what our men and women sacrifice every day for this country. And they did the same thing back in the day. So for us, it was a no-brainer to leave that statute alone. It's a unanimous decision. All 7 board members voted to leave that statute alone. One thing I can tell you, if you do go ahead and move the statute, the whole crowd won't stop. We just had, up in Charlottesville City Council just removed the Lewis and Clark Memorial. It's not going to stop the statue. They're going to keep coming. Somebody needs to stand up to the vote crowd, and you guys will do that today. I hope you do. Thank you, sir.
Tony Long, is this Long? Tony.
My name is Tony Lundy from Danville, Virginia. Neighbor, you folks here in Calhoun County have a lot of friends and have ancestors that live down here as well. I just want to say, why is it that when people are getting along, I would say most of the people, everybody in the room, we work together, we play together, we go to church together. Why is it that when people start to get along, somebody brings up a wedge issue to separate us? I think it's purposely done, and I think we should not allow that to happen. And to take down that monument is a wedge issue. I did some research. I tried to do more in Castle County, but had short time. But in the past, I've researched a lot of counties in North Carolina and Virginia. And I can tell you from my research, in some cases, you would have upwards of 60% of the households in a county that lost a family member during that war. This county, I'd say it's very safe to say, lost more people during that war than all other wars put together. And people want to bring up the emotional argument of slavery, and I can understand that. But North Carolina and Virginia are both. North Carolina was waiting to see what Virginia would do. Virginia voted to stay in the Union. A few days later, Lincoln had his war secretary and wrote a letter to the governor, to several governors, two of which were Virginia and North Carolina, asking for troops and telling them he was going to be sending an army through their state, which at the time was viewed by every constitutional scholar as an illegal act. The reason North Carolina and Virginia seceded, and Virginia voted one time, it's there for the record, they voted in early April to stay in the Union. They voted a week later to come out of the Union because of that illegal act being threatened. This is a war, a lot of people never came home. A lot of people from Castle County never made home from that war. This is basically the equivalent of the tomb of the unknown soldier for this county, for that war. So I appreciate it if you leave that up and let people work out the issues without outsiders bringing in a wedge issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, oh yes, my address is 135 Fire Department Drive, I live right down there in the big White House, right opposite here. I came after they called me on the phone and said there was a meeting to discuss taking the statue out. I showed up myself because my grandma dedicated the statue. She was president of the United Daughters of the Confederacy for the county. My great-grandpa, they called him Captain Zeke. He was a Confederate cavalryman. It's on his tombstone. And my point is, look at the plaque on there. That's what its purpose is. Reading hidden messages into the thing, that's just wishful thinking. What they meant the statue to say is what's on the plaque. And he led Castle County boys off to the Civil War. I don't know the history of how many of them came back, but that was my great grandpa. And whatever the council decides to do, that's their lawful right. But they went through, they just, like the fellow said, those that died in a war, despite what side they were on, deserve a monument. I know from my own research in Scotland and at Culloden Moor, there's a monument to the Scottish chiefs that died, and they definitely weren't liked by the English, who allowed them to put up this war monument to their, who had been their enemies. I don't think it's wise, like the other fellow said. Now, what'll be next? Grant's Tomb, Gettysburg, any war monument is a target. So that's all I know. I felt like I had to do something for my ancestors because my grandma dedicated the statue. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Thomas May.
My name is Thomas May. I'm from the neighboring county, Alamance County. We've had a lot of discussion about our monuments. I asked that y'all follow our lead, keep the monument where it is. State law says it stays there unless it goes to the historic commission. If y'all want to take it down, do the proper steps. Y'all expect people from Castle County to obey the laws. Y'all need to take yourself and obey the law yourself. Me personally, I think a group of Pittsburgh and Hillsborough every month, a flag, and pay respect for our ancestors. I ain't in the Castle County yet. I mean, if that monument is removed, I will be here once a month with a group, flagging, and our respect. I know y'all want to see that. So I ask that y'all obey the law and keep the monument where it is. It's just a memorial to the people who lost their lives and were able to come back. That's all I gotta say. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
I'm forever, and I'm here to the last meeting we had on the board of the best review. I think, and he got the minutes on his meeting. And the minutes don't compare what went on in it. I had 6 items that I had each committee. And each one had the same thing in it, at the same day. But these minutes, one of the time, they that always been in controversy. He's saying, no young people that I helped you to. Now, I don't know who's responsible for taking care of it. But you gotta, you might be research the place for that. Now that see that you get it changed. But the $1 million, very big $1 million, and I pay.
Reverend Brown Johnson.
My name is Reverend Schaffner. Live on 150 Schaffner. Commissioners, I'm not going to give any threats. I'm not going to say what should be done and what shouldn't be done. But I would like you all to look at that flyer that was placed before you. there was a health survey. That flyer was done by the UNC School of Healing, put together for the community based off of the health survey that was conducted in the Anderson community, which is in the direct path of the proposed pollutant industry. Keep in mind, the Rose Wind has no friends, especially when it comes to this Black community. This flyer lines up with what the health survey states that was done back in 2019 by the Castle County. Thing that is so amazing is that the health survey that was conducted recently proves that we have some serious health concerns in Castle County. See, some 18, 19 months ago, we spoke together about the issues, the health issues in the Anderson community. But no one believed us or me. See, the community, because our survey was not done by a third party. That's what we kept hearing. No third party couldn't be found. So, commissioners, we had a third party come out and complete a health survey, and now we're asking you to stop this polluting industry, stop that plant from being built right next to our homes. See, the thing is, commissioners, I asked you to stop the potential environmental genocide. Commissioners, I asked you to stop the potential systematic racism and bullying that is happening to this low income, sickly Black community. I ask you once again to stop this from happening in our EJ community. See, the Anderson community is letting you know that we have enough cumulative impacts going on right now. We have the lion's den, as you call it, a conservative center. You tried to been sitting on your back porch at night and all you hear is lions roaring, knowing they're less than 1,000, 1,500 feet from your backyard. You try telling your kids they can't play outside because a lion might be running free. You try telling your kids that they can't breathe because of the polluting industry that is blowing the smoke right upon their noses. Well, and again, it's not in your backyard. So please, commissioners, I ask for us to do. Mr. Chairman, Committee Board of Commissioners, my name is Ron Brandon. I live at 769 Clubhouse Drive in Blanche, North Carolina. A lot has been said about that monument, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of what's going on, but I'm just going to say, as a veteran, I try to remember the 640,000 Americans that died in that conflict. And I just wanted also to point out, America has a lot of scars. And you can sit there and try to cover them up like they want monuments, but you can't remove the scars. And you here tonight are at precipice. You are sitting where you can make changes to the day, but remember that the values constantly change. And so a monument that represents 4 years of war is torn down today. An American flag that represented 80 years of slavery becoming down tomorrow. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Glad to be able to speak on this. My name is Bruce Stokes. I come from 306 Country Road, Yancey, North Carolina. One here of raised inside the city. I see a lot of unfamiliar faces in the building. I actually live and see the activity about one of the biggest parts is it is a very large Black community. And when we speak on statutes and stuff like that, you know, I understand some of that ancestors. I do. I would have the same sentiment about it, which I really do have the same sentiment about it. the same sentimental value is that I don't see any monuments for the lives lost of black men. They weren't able to wear shoes anymore. People whose names were erased out of history altogether. And I know that's not the issue that we're talking about, but if we can have an effort to keep those monuments, I see the effort, it's a big effort. Yes, everyone understands the representation, so I saw the big effort of being able to keep those monuments. No problem. Those are their ancestors, I understand. But what I don't understand is where are my ancestors? If we're gonna make it a good community, a good city, see, we just left slavery for dysfunction, maybe just 100 years ago. It just started being corrected to the fullest degree, starting in the 60s, just started. So we just got started on this thing, you know, and us as the people together, just being educated in the same school, we're supposed to be learning things at the same pace. So we can't act like, see, like right now, I notice a lot of people that could be here standing and representing the same thing that I am, but they're miseducated because they are black or racial education. They don't know, you know, they don't know about racial economics. They don't know about education. How things got all leverage when they were free and when all these things happen. They don't know. So what I like to talk about is properly educated people and not being in a rush to do a lot of things except correcting what is wrong. Because if we correct what's wrong, this situation about statues, it just come up to me. It was here when the statue first got there. It was already an issue from the beginning. It was an issue you had of America. I can't say half of America because statistically, people that it defends, people that it defends is not half of America, but they have a right to defend it. They are Americans as well. You know, so we have a whole group of Americans. And you see that your brother is offended by something that you're so proud of, then I would find a way to reason with my American brother and say, well, what's wrong? And why? What is wrong? Why don't you like this? And I know that a black educated community, one that's racially educated, racial economics, and things like that, they can come up with a million reasons why it would have been and it's going to continue to be. So, what I was suggesting is just get a museum and take all the statues and put it in the museum, and everybody who loves statues can go look at the statue whenever they want, it won't be destroyed. Thank you.
Slade by the Dairy Road. And then just make the sign.
Must have been a mistake.
Okay, you just meant to sign. Okay, all right, that's fine. And Tyler and Timothy as well. You go.
No, I didn't mean to sign up for that.
Okay, just come up to your name.
My name is Thomas Sullivan. I'm 4495 High Street Road, Eastern North Carolina. And I've been here my whole life. And I heard everybody say about the statue. And when I came to this building today, I did something I haven't done since I was in high school. We stood up and we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. That's something I haven't done in almost a decade. I was like, well, I haven't pledged allegiance to this country in a long time. And when we're talking about the Confederacy and soldiers and tearing down statues, those people are Americans, in my opinion. They fought against this country. They fought against their brother and sister. That's all right. But this is the flag we fly with right here. And I might not be the most patriotic person in the world. I see some veterans in the building. I've been a lot more than I never have in my short 28 years of life. But if you want to come together But that statue gotta go. I can't. Because I heard the Lord say it was 30, 40, 50, however many Confederates died in the war. There was over millions of slaves that died on those ships. That was in there already. Only one person. I mean, I'm just as sorry as anybody else in this building. I ain't no baby, ain't none of them. I live right here with your kids. I went to school with them. I played football, track and field with them. And this is what y'all want to do. Y'all want to fight over something that was already settled. They lost. I'm sorry.
So that you finish, if you only got a little while left.
How much I got? I wish I could spit out some nice facts about all the numbers and everything, but I'm just emotional. You say it's a wedge, you know what else is a wedge? Bracelet. It's funny bracelet. I'm not gonna go through the details and all that. Statue gotta go.
Okay, your time is up, sir.
I'm the only, there's only a handful of young people here. Think about it. No, it's not, no greatest resource is going out the county, out the door. Because it's stuff like this.
Sign up, or were you signing up to speak? Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we completed our public comments section. I am going to take just a short period of time. If there's anyone who did not sign up, okay, let me finish and then you can, I'll ask you to come up. But, you know, let's not repeat everything that we've already heard again, okay? All right, so if you would like to speak up in public comments, you can come up with your name.
My name is Shannon Morris. I live at 1117 Deer Trail in Cherry Grove. And I'll be quite frank, I cannot believe I have to stand here today. It's just gotten to the point of ridiculous. I was trying really hard to sit this one out, guys. Really hard, because it just seems like such common sense to me. But the rhetoric that's going around the community right now has gotten to the point of ridiculous. And despite the fact that most of it doesn't make any sense and isn't even factually correct, it doesn't make it any less dangerous. I care too much about my community and the people who live here to keep my mouth shut and watch this train wreck. First, let me make a few disclosures. I wear many hats in this community, but tonight I am simply a friend and a neighbor. I am not affiliated with any political party because I can't fully support either policy agenda, and I certainly don't trust any of them to do the right thing. I grew up here, and history has always seemed alive for me. But there were so many fascinating parts that we never got to hear. We'd taken field trips to the courthouse and the old jail, the Confederate soldier in the museum. We passed by the Calvin Graves plantation with its historical marker every day on the school bus. We learned about the glorious antebellum strength and splendor of our county. But we never talked about what happened in this county after all that came crashing down. I knew plenty of mighty fine families with the surname of Graves, but none of them were white. Those were the stories I wanted to hear. Surely those were the stories that embodied all we celebrate about America: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all achieved with hard work and resilience, but that's not the history that we have preserved here. And asking those kinds of questions would get a person in a lot of trouble. I did, however, learn all about the KKK on Casco school buses, as anybody who went to this school system did. We learned all about everybody's daddy and uncle and what they were involved in, and we'd all drank a lot of whiskey and smoked with a lot of people in this neighborhood. Wait, isn't your daddy in charge? Oh, yeah, that's right, we're not supposed to talk about that. I've spent the last 20 years privy to conversations in most of the room in this county where decisions are being made. I've been threatened more than once to keep my mouth shut and quit stirring up trouble because I dare to raise the word racism. I'm never surprised by the number of community members and public officials and government employees who reach out because they can't say anything about what they see because they were afraid they will lose their jobs. That, people, is a white supremacy culture.
Okay, let's see if the same thing, please. Direct all your comments to this board, please.
Keep
And you have 50 seconds.
Keep the statue if you choose to, but let no one in this county insult our decency and insult our intelligence by trying to claim that racism isn't a thing. I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous.
Thank you. Now, I can stop public comments at this moment, but I want people to have their say. But we're going to do this, be respectful to one another, or we're not going to do it anymore. Okay, so speak your piece and please direct it to the board. Thank you. Okay, we have one back here. Yes, sir. Is anybody else? But I think it's a, okay. Just two more people. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak. I didn't know I was supposed to sign it before I came. I apologize for my mistake. But I live in Hale County, Walsh Mill Road. My name is Ricky Pritchett. My great-great-grandfather fought for the 5th North Carolina County. I don't know how many people in this room have stopped and looked at that monument. I have been watching after that monument the past 5 years. There are Confederate soldiers buried inside of that Confederate monument. I have cleaned their headstones. I have placed flags on their graves to honor their service to the state of North Carolina. I use a North Carolina Republic flag. Those soldiers, there's one Virginian in amongst that. I had 3 Virginia ancestors that fought or more in that war. There were 13 companies from Castle County enlisted to fight in the war because that's what it was. South was invaded. We didn't ask for it. The Confederate soldier among the American soldier is the only one that has fought for the true Constitution of the United States of America. On that monument, and this is the inscription of which I would say maybe 25% in this room know what it says. To the sons of Castle County who served in the war of 1861 to 1865 in answer to the call of their country. In whatever event that may face our national existence, may God give us the will to do what is right. That, like our forefathers, we may impress our time with the security and steadfastness of our lives. That was erected in 1921 by the United Dollars Confederacy. A lot of people we've already heard are offended by a lot of things. I am offended a lot of things as well. But the monument eradication of going across this country and cancel culture, it's wrong. If you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it, as everybody states. And I'm afraid for this county If you take down that monument, it's gonna create a problem. And some of you may agree with me, some of you may not. But I have been told by other people in the community that there are cameras watching that monument in case of anybody trying to deface it. Well, if any of you in this room have witnessed any of those videos, you have saw me on that camera. Because on Confederate History and Heritage Month, Confederate Flag Day, and Veterans Day, I walked right over that monument and I placed the North Carolina Republic flag to honor the men that didn't come home when they were called by this state to protect its people from the invading force.
15 seconds.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. The last one, and we'll close public comments.
Wait, that's the last thing? Appreciate your time, and I came here tonight, I wasn't planning on speaking, but I know, I will, Randy Pope, John Blake, Gainesville, North Carolina, well, Pelham, North Carolina. But I heard so many silly things tonight, I got to speak out of that. First off, I'm retired from a major industry, 20 years in Alamance County. And we had very structured things we had to do when we had a problem or concern. First thing you did, you brainstormed till you found the root cause. We got people sitting tonight talking about blaming all the white folks for slavery. Well, I got news for you. Those black people didn't come on a ship just because they pulled up there. Somebody called them and sold them. So that's your root cause. Now.
You back over the standardization. I'm saying, sir.
You brought it up.
Please, folks, I can't, I'm going. No, I'm not gonna sit here and read out loud.
Hey, that's. Excuse me. I don't have to put this room, but we're not gonna have this meeting. We need to respect one another.
I'm standing on my own too, right here. What's up?
They're trying, the more you talk to me, thank you.
That issue should never been brought up in this meeting. Slavery.
We are done.
I want to ask, I'm just gonna make one comment. Who voted for Mark Robinson for lieutenant governor last year?
Please, I was driving out there courthouse, but I will do it. Okay, we have to be civil to one another, whether we disagree 100%. This does not sell me. Thank you, thank you. Okay, recognitions, any commissioner have recognitions? I have one, and this is for our community committee, paramedic, Regina Cardwell. This email was sent to our EMS director, and I'm just going to read it as it was written. And this was directed to Barry Lynch. I'm not sure what all responsibilities that Regina Cardwell has. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But she has been she was recognized by a couple of county residents. This is information that was given to me by my wife. She stated that a resident didn't have any meds for a couple of months, and Regina took care of it the same day she heard about it. Also, she got a resident food in her house when she had found out there wasn't any food this late. I'm not sure if it's the same resident or not. Again, I'm not sure what her responsibilities are, but she is definitely making a positive mark in the community. So we thank our community paramedic for that. No other recognitions, then we will move to the presentation, and I will turn this over to our county manager.
Commissioners, on November 30th, 2020, the Board of Commissioners directed staff and the necessary boards and committees to pursue the redesign of the square, with the first step being developing a plan to relocate all monuments, and a plan that would include location, costs, associated aspects of the relocation, and include strategic community input. After a roll call vote, the motion carried unanimously. The initial step in developing the plan was to solicit strategic community input into the redesign process. The survey results from the process used to gather the community input will be presented to the Board of Commissioners tonight. The next step the board will need to take is to determine to which location each existing monument will be relocated. After this process is complete, staff can more accurately determine the costs and associated aspects of the redesign plan. With that being said, we have Tim Schwantes with us tonight from Healthy Places by Design. They're the company that we engaged to cover the survey and survey results. So I'll ask Tim to present the survey results.
Okay. Welcome, Tim.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I am going to share my screen, and for verbal, can you all tell me when you see that? Yes. Okay. Great. All right, let me get my technology going here. All right, let's see. Okay, are you all seeing the slides there?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, so thank you for having me. I'm Tim Schwantes with Healthy Places by Design, and I've been working in the Dan River region, mostly through the capacity of consulting with the Danville Regional Foundation since 2015 through a lot of work with the Health Collaborative, for those who are familiar with that. I've appreciated seeing the intentionality behind the work you're doing tonight, hearing so much passion from the people who are presenting, and personally have enjoyed watching Caswell do things that many other counties in North Carolina I'm working with are still trying to figure out, like the health and all policies, which you all passed a few years ago. And we define health both as physical health as well as mental health. With this particular subject, it's no different. You all are right to take the time needed to hear from all the different voices in the community to really recreate the space to make it useful for the residents and people that come visit downtown Yanceyville. All right, let's see. Okay.
You know, we maybe have see your entire screen. It looks like maybe the bottom's cut off.
Just the bottom. Okay. Let me sorry, technology, right? Always fun. Let me try this one more time here. Okay, how's that?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, before I jump into the results, I'll quickly tell you about Healthy Places by Design and who we are and why we're working with you all. So we advance community-led action and proven place-based strategies to ensure health and well-being for all. So this certainly aligns with the place-basedness that you all are talking about. And when we say community-led, we work to lift up the voices of the people who live in those places. So we've been doing this work for 19 years across 42 states, and some communities are very similar to Caswell County and others look very different. We consult, coach, create, collaborate, those types of initiatives. All right, did it go to the next one here? Okay, good. I think we got it. Like Brian Miller said, on November 30th, Caswell Board of Commissioners voted to make a plan to redesign the Caswell Courthouse Square, and they wanted help reimagining the space. So if this does happen, it would most likely include moving the 4 current monuments. So the World War I monument, Veterans Memorial Monument, Confederate Soldier Statue, and the N.L. Dillard Monument to alternative yet public locations in the county. In an effort to gather feedback from potential locations, what we were asked to do by Caswell County government was to gather input directly from stakeholder groups and residents in the county, and really answered the question, how do you envision the courthouse square and where should the monuments be relocated if that were to happen? The information collected from the surveys is what's next, and I recognize this is simply more data for the county commissioners to consider what's next. The survey gathered opinions and suggestions from 19 key stakeholder groups, and the purpose of the questionnaire was twofold. So to share the opinions of the relocation of the monuments currently on the square, and to understand residents' needs and interests for the square redesign that enhances and reflects the values and culture of all the residents who visit the square. As you all know, and we've heard a little bit tonight, but just what we would say is the public space and what's on that public space, the symbols and the monuments supported by public dollars must reflect all the community values. And this survey wasn't about taking down anything, it was about relocation, just to be clear on that point. All right. So the survey instruments, we use SurveyMonkey. If you all are familiar with that, it's an online platform. Because of COVID, this was sort of the best option we had for doing it to try to reach the most people in the time we had. So there were 11 questions and 3 components that I'll walk through. So the opinions about Caswell County generally, we got those. Opinions about the re-envisioned square and those monuments, and then the participants or survey participants' demographics. It was open for 15 days. And there were 3 to 4 reminders sent out during that time, so people could be reminded to take the survey. So the overview of the survey and who it was sent to, these are all the groups that it was sent to. Is this all the groups it could have gone to? No, of course not. But the intent was to get a cross-section of engaged residents and non-residents who care about Caswell County. So we looked at all the different organizations, and what happened just in terms of methodology was it was sent to leaders or those that disseminate information from these different groups to pass on to members or others to then go take the survey. Just a quick sort of meta slide, if that's of interest to you. We had 249 people respond to question 1, and then it sort of tapered off. But for the most part, we had approximately, somewhere around 150 people that sort of stuck with it through the end, if that makes sense, which is not uncommon. And for color coordinating, just in terms of themes, and how I'm going to walk through the results here right now, is demographics are in orange, blue is generally how you feel about Caswell County, and then the, I don't know what color, mustard yellow is really about the re-envisioning the square as well as the monument questions. I'm not sure why the numbers aren't there. Sorry about that, but this pie chart, 8%, I don't know if you can see my arrow here, but the 3 smallest slices there make up 8% total who answered they lived in Caswell County for under 12 years. So we had one that was 1 to 3 years, that was 1%. And then 4 to 12 years was we divided it one more time, but around 3 or 4% there. Almost 60% of folks who answered the survey had lived in the county for more than 12 years. That's the biggest slice. And then the 30%, the blue slice, are people that say they do not live in Caswell County. This includes people who are business owners in the county, work for organizations in the county that it was sent to, or former residents. So you may look at this 30% and dismiss it, but two things to note. One, when I did sort of parse out the data set without that 30% of the non-residents, it didn't actually change overall trends in the data. And then number two, this survey is again intended for those who live in Caswell as well as those who frequent the county and are engaged in activities in the county. So we kept that in. Right here, what I did, this is towards the end of the survey. We asked people how they got the survey or who their affiliated organization was in terms of how they answered. And I put these in order from most answered to least. Naturally, as we know in Caswell County, people could be affiliated with multiple organizations and wear multiple hats, as we heard. But we really ask them to just claim one, which one they were representing with when they took this survey. So for those who can't see these data in front of you, the NL Dillard class of 66 that was 45 different people took it that were affiliated with that. 15 people simply said they were residents or citizens of the county. 9 from the Health Collaborative, 9 other was made up of business and anonymous and people that didn't want to answer. We had 8 from Cedar Grove Baptist Association, and it sort of goes down from there. We had VFW and the Legion making up 13 between those two. You'll have this presentation, of course, afterwards as well. And then when I matched up the race ethnicity of respondents who took the survey to those in the census, what we know from census data, you can see there is an overrepresentation of survey participants who are Black or African American who responded to the survey compared to the county itself, and an underrepresentation of white respondents. I want to be clear that we did not oversample. And what I mean by that is that we didn't send this to more predominantly Black groups than white. The way that this should be interpreted, and it's true to any surveys, is that people who are most passionate for or against issues and feel most impacted by issues are most likely to give their opinion. And we see this here tonight as well. So those who are more moderate or likely feel less impacted by a decision are less likely to answer the survey. So that's how we ended up with this sort of cross-section of the results within the survey that we had. So what I'll do now is go into the next few questions. So that was the demographics. And the first question here is, what makes Caswell County a welcoming place to live and visit? And I'm listing these in order.
Could you hold on just a minute, please?
Yep.
We have several people leaving and we don't want to distract them. So if you don't mind, if you could hold on just a minute.
Did you say just pause for a second? I'm sorry.
If you just pause for a moment, please.
Sounds good.
I apologize, Tim, but we can hold on just a little bit longer.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for telling me. I'm not there, so I can't see what's happening. So I appreciate it.
Hang on, I tell you what, we are going to take a recess. So if you will hold where you are, we're going to recess for about 5 minutes.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you. Give us just another minute, Tim, and I'll let you proceed. Okay, Tim, you can go ahead.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, good. So question 2, what we had, please interrupt me if you all, are you all seeing question 2 on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what makes Caswell County a welcoming place to live and visit? And I we analyzed the results and put these in order of weightedness. So these reasons are probably similar to many of the reasons that you all ran for office in Caswell County as well. So family, friendly, home, many aspects of rural lifestyle and rural living. And then next, we divided question 3 into 2 slides and divided over 2 slides with 4 themes. And the first 2 on this slide are also weighted based on the prominence of how frequently we heard these answers. So economic development and inclusivity and diversity. We'll start with those 2 in the next slide. Have recreation and outdoors, and then sort of a catch-all miscellaneous here. But under economic development, better broadband, high-speed internet, more business, more job opportunities, higher paid jobs, entertainment, development, zoning. So these were questions that people really getting their juices flowing on what ways could Caswell County be a more welcoming place for themselves and as well as others that are coming into the county. Inclusivity and diversity, answers there. Consider the diversity of cultures that exist in determining decisions, more open dialogue for citizens regarding history, race, as well as broadband and other county issues, getting rid of generational racism, more diverse leadership, and inclusive and diverse ideas and openness. And then the other answers that showed up, I put these into themes. The other 2, recreation and outdoors, more recreational trails, promoting outdoor amenities, more places, spaces for young people, and events, festivals, and then sort of had a miscellaneous, like I was saying, that was about school systems, museums, historic places, and then some folks saying remove the statue, and then others say don't change a thing or stop trying to change history. So some of what we've already heard tonight. Okay, so this is really a big part of the survey was this 4 and 5. And the way it was presented for those that hadn't seen it was this map on the right-hand side was shown. And then we asked people, please select your top choice if the monuments were to be relocated, maybe suggestions where they would go. This wasn't asked whether they wanted to have them moved, but just if they were to move, where would they go? And the value of having a survey, the value of, we put together the best questions that we could as we saw them. And even what emerged out of question 6, you'll see are some other responses that were maybe better than we could have captured as well. But just to show you visually what you're looking at here. So the World War I Monument, Veterans Memorial Monument, Confederate Soldier Statue, and then the N.L. Dillard Monument are the rows. And then we had them select their top choice in question 4, and then their second choice, if that wasn't available, for question 5. I coupled the answers together, or I blended them, because the answers were actually similar. When you combined them, what comes up is that the green that you see, what I did just to sort of color code it so it sort of pops a little bit more, is green is the first choice overall, where people would like to see monuments moved if they were to move. And then the pink or the red there is their last choice overall, where those should move. So the World War I Monument, Veterans Memorial Monument, and Confederate Soldier Statue, overwhelming majority all said if they are to move, to be moved behind the historic courthouse. And then the N.L. Dillard Monument, of the 4 choices we gave people, they initially suggested near the senior center. I originally looked at the answers separately, but like I said, they didn't have a different answer. So let me move to the next one. And then question 6 was, what additional locations should be considered for any of these monuments? Similar to what we heard tonight so far, we certainly had people that said no change, leave the square as is. I will say, at least for this survey, that was in the minority of responses. But I'm putting it here because it was across the board and all that people did say that. But we did get other answers. Because we knew a map with only 4 locations might not cover all of the spots people would consider, we asked this question. The Veterans Memorial, for all 3, that felt relevant, so behind the historic courthouse. And then what we didn't put on the map in question 4 and 5 that emerged with this one is that the gun library or the school, the Dillard School, for the Dillard Monument. The Confederate Monument, the Confederate statue, had the most variation on other suggestions, as you can see. And again, it wasn't about taking it down, but if it were to move, and people gave suggestions where that could be. Shifting gears a little bit with question 7 and question 8, and this is where the survey maybe shifted gears as well from the dominant conversation we've had so far here tonight. If you were to redesign the square to be more welcoming, how would you envision that space, or re-envision that space? So moving from thinking about monuments to thinking about that reimagining the space. And these are also listed by weightedness, I guess is the word, where people like the idea of public seating, benches, gazebo, a water feature, flowers, walkways, shade trees, a sculpture or some sort of art by local artists, places for children, and then well lit, things that people could really see a place to gather as well. And then you can see on the right hand side, again, it's weighted. So, plaques or statues that reflect Caswell County historic events. Maybe I didn't get deep into what that meant, if it was generic or something like that, but entertainment space like a stage or other things as well sort of came up. Other aspects of redesigning the courthouse square that you'd like to share? I thought this, I really like the answers to this one personally. When people were asked for those redesigns, two themes emerged for me. So that space could be a place to make connections or a place for people to go gather and have sort of social interactions, or considering the environment. How they answered it was also considering the environment adjacent to the square or just on the other side of the quote unquote boundary of the government square. So what I think about when I read this is the concept of sort of a ripple effect. So if you were to imagine the square as the center of your impact in terms of investment or reinvestment with a certain type of redesign, it could have positive impacts on the way people engage with it and invest in the spaces around it as well. So you're not just impacting the square itself. It could sort of have exponential indirect benefits that don't require the same level of intervention from the county to get positive results based on that prime location. So people said, let's meet at the square, more places to shop around the square, make it an inviting place to be, not just to drive around or look through a car window, and revisit we saw this a couple times, revisiting previous plans about a redesign. And then sort of just breathe more life into the area for all people, inviting for all ages, races, abilities. And then again, another theme that came up, so it's worth mentioning, was there, leave things as they are. And then these last two slides, I shared the results of the survey, and I just have two more slides to share. Wanted to leave you with a quote from a report we just wrote on socially connected communities. And when I read the report, I immediately thought of Caswell County. I'm just going to read this little snippet here because I feel like it's worth pulling out. Public spaces play many roles in communities, one of the foremost being a welcome mat. So their designs, locations, aesthetics, and uses tell visitors and residents a lot about the values, the cultures, and the identity of a place. So the word welcoming, it shows up in these questions that I had, but it's a different way of thinking of it than a passive place that you go just to simply memorialize or has a certain connotation, but it can be a little bit of all of that. It can be that plus. So I think of this concept of the third place, where people have their homes as their first place, they have their workspace or workplace as their second place. And then thinking about what are those third places in Caswell County where community life happens. You want that to be sort of a neutral place that reflects the cultures of all who live in Caswell County. And so I guess the question is, could or should the square be that in your estimation? And then lastly, you all have the challenge, as we've heard tonight, of doing that, both that preserving and embracing. We talk about that in the county, and that's the healthy tension that's here. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness to which you're going about it. There were two goals with the survey, and that one is to consider where to put the monuments from the Caswell County Courthouse Square, and the other is to consider that redesign. So while the survey was a step to do both, I believe, it's sort of putting the monuments in a different place that is appropriate, feels like a first step to that redesign that creates that welcome mat. So what does welcoming mean to all your different subpopulations in Caswell County too? So and considering, like, do you want to activate a space or not? And are you in agreement with what you want it to be? Again, as Brian Miller said, within a reasonable budget. So there's many more ways to bring residents into the process of redesigning a space as well and making a space something that everyone can enjoy and ultimately reflects the values of all community residents. So I could share processes with you from other communities like Black Mountain here, pictured here with many. And the reason I use that picture is because that actually includes many of the amenities that people talked about in that question 7, like the gazebo, like shade, like a water feature, to make theirs. And you know, the Board of Commissioner, you all probably along with the planners could get further engagement in this re-envisioning process. So with that, I'll end, or I'll pause, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you these results for those that are committed to Caswell County and those that took the time to fill out the survey. And I'm open to further questions now or later as they arise.
Thank you, Tim. Does the board have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do. What was the cost of this presentation?
The board approved $5,000 for Healthy Places by Design to design the survey. The board approved $5,000 for the Healthy Places by Design to develop the survey, conduct the survey, do the analysis of the survey, and present it to the.
And I see the pretty picture of the redesign of the square, but what is the estimated cost for doing all that work?
You can't come up with a cost before you know where you're going to put it.
No, I'm not speaking of the statute. I'm talking about simply redoing the 4 squares that presented in that photo with the fountain and the leveling it down. The monuments, that's a whole other thing, but I'm glad you brought that up. Let me speak about that for a second. When I asked you last time about cost, you told me to have to vote to move them before we find out what the cost is. Excuse me, but that sounds a whole lot like Nancy Pelosi. We got to pass the Affordable Care Act. Secondly, out of curiosity, what the ballpark figure, I did a few Google searches just sitting in my car. I was trying to find a locality that had 4 monuments that they would move. And so I went and I found it in Louisiana. They moved forward with $1.9 million. There was another one in Texas, $750,000 moved one. The cheapest I found in modern times was $220,000. So if this board votes to move these monuments, and then that gentleman right there sues us, we have to put them back. We might be on the hook for moving them one way and then moving them back in the other. Plus the legal expenses, if any of those monuments are damaged when they're moved, we're going to be liable for that too. Don't we have other things we can spend money like that on?
I have one more. You have a question for about what you did.
Do you have any cost projection on any of what I just said, sir?
On which part of it? On redesigning the square or moving monuments?
Either one. I'd like you to put on either one of them.
Well, no, I could certainly follow up on that. I don't have that right now. And I think looking only at the costs and not actually the benefit is also a challenge when you get into these things, because the sunk cost or leaving things as is also is a cost.
Very interesting you bring the word challenge, because I want to back up to something you said earlier. You were talking about the people associated with it, and they tend to comment more on the survey, and that's why it was out of proportion. It was out of proportion, my friend, because long ago, the people in this county thought this was a done deal, that nobody was going to tear the monuments down. Then it came back into place. So they were caught off guard. And now they're here tonight expressing their feelings on this thing.
Thank you.
And hey, okay, any questions for our presenter, Tim? Well, thank you again for the work and presentation. I'm sure our county manager will be back in touch with you if needed. Any further questions or may come up? You have anything else, County Manager, for?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Just want to remind the board that we have not voted to relocate anything. So the next step we need to take as far as what we're doing after this presentation is, or we need to determine which location that we would like to see them relocated if the board ever votes to relocate. Then we'll get our cost analysis done. And then we'll go from there. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, in light of the presentation from the legal gentleman sitting here and what we're facing as a county and the fact that we have pending court cases that could change the legality of what we're contemplating, I make a motion that we stop all consideration on moving these monuments off.
I'll second it.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
We have a second. Commissioner Carter. Any questions or discussion? Commissioner Carter. Commissioner Carter, he's on. Okay, we will roll call vote then. This vote, if you vote yes, it will be to stop any further movement on relocating the monuments from the square.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I feel like this board needs to talk to the county attorney in closed session before we do it.
And personally, I agree, but I would ask if our distinguished commissioner would consider withdrawing that motion until we have time to do that.
No, sir.
Absolutely not. Yes means to stop any further. Commissioner Dickerson,
I believe we stop any further discussion.
Commissioner Carter,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall, Commissioner Jeffries, Commissioner McVeigh, Commissioner Ostriker,
No.
Commissioner Holman, no. Next step we need to determine, gentlemen, if we want is to determine where we believe we should relocate the monuments if the board votes to do so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will reiterate again, I think we need to talk to the county attorney before we go any further.
No, sir, then we'll get a consensus of the board about the talking with our attorney first, before we proceed with this.
I agree.
Okay. Okay, therefore we will meet with our county attorney. Mr. Farrell.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think Commissioner McVeigh had a good idea. I would still like for the board to discuss this in closed session because we've heard so much information tonight where, with the court procedures where we may be sued, might not be sued, and additional information. And we also need to find out what the cost is going to be for removing all the statues. So I agree with Mr. McVeigh. I think the board does need to, even though we took a vote, I think the board does need to discuss it further in closed session. That's my opinion.
That's what the consensus of the board is, and that's what we will do.
Mr. Chairman, we can have that on your next agenda.
I'm sorry.
We can have that on your next agenda if you will.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have, I understand that we have an email, public comment email that was with all the help, got to do it, so let's please take care of that matter. And then we will recess immediately after.
Okay, the public comments that was emailed was from Eileen Claggett. She resides at 108 J Lane in Providence. She resides at 108 J Lane in Providence. She said that she would like this recorded verbatim. On June 21st, 2021, you had a public hearing on the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. There were 5 speakers who commented. Chairman Owen cut off my statement at 3 minutes, and it was subsequently continued by John Claggett for 2 additional minutes. The entire public hearing lasted 15 minutes. In the minutes from this meeting, my comments were summarized as Eileen Claggett of 108 J Lane in Providence spoke on issues with the budget regarding the detention center and public schools. John Claggett's comments were similarly summarized as spoke on the budget regarding maintenance, code square, and vehicles. In the past 10 years, our public comments were recorded verbatim, so that was a reasonable expectation. The point of public hearing is to have expressed concerns become public record. For example, the detention center comment included concerns that projected expenditures exceeding revenue, anticipating more than $1 million deficit this year. The public schools redundantly requested $552,000 in capital outlay for items listed to be covered by their stimulus relief funds. Economic development and Code Square are budgeted to lose $192,911. Over the past year, vehicle lease budget has increased from $104,706 to $342,106, and the county has approximately 1 vehicle for every 2 employees. The brevity of statements in the minutes do not reflect the content or intent of our statements, nor the concern of citizens. A copy of our public comments was recorded as well as handed in email to the clerk of the board. I am requesting that public comments made by Eileen Claggett and John Claggett during a public hearing on the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget hearing be entered into the minutes of that meeting verbatim, as has been done over the past decade. Please address this as you approve these minutes today. Thank you.
Okay, we will address that. We will probably remove the June 21st minutes until they are corrected. But at this time, we're going to take a recess. All right, we're set back in session. We need to move to the agenda. We need approval of the agenda. We have a motion, need a second. We have a second. Any questions, comments? All those approved by aye? Aye.
What was the motion again, Dave?
Approval of the agenda.
It's an echo, I didn't understand.
Approval of the agenda. Is that good? Are you a yes, Commissioner Carter? Commissioner Carter, can you hear us?
I can't understand you.
Okay. We are voting on approving the agenda.
Okay.
You good? Okay, so yes, vote. All right, on the consent agenda, gentlemen, we are going to remove the June 21st, 2021 regular meeting minutes till we get those corrected. And those things added immediately. The rest of the items under the consent agenda, I will need a motion to approve.
21st, it needs to be corrected.
The June 21st, is the one we will remove the consent agenda until next week.
But you're talking about approving the rest.
Yes, the rest of it's under the consent agenda.
Second, move, whatever you need.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. We have a second. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor, with aye?
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda has been approved with the exception of that one item. Discussion items, Pelham Industrial Park conceptual rendering. Mr. Miller.
Commissioners, in an effort to better conceptualize what the Pelham Industrial Park may look like, and to help develop a strategic vision for the site, we've requested that Dewberry develop a conceptual rendering of the Pelham Industrial Park. The development of the conceptual rendering is in part due to the anticipated external pressures that will come from the approved casino in Danville, Virginia. Conceptualizing the industrial park will allow better utilization of land and prevent certain parts of the property to become cut off by smaller parcel development. So having said that, commissioners, if you look in your agenda packet at the conceptual drawing, once again, this is not a plan, this is not anything other than what it states it is, it's a conceptual drawing. I think over the coming months, the board will be under increasing pressure to develop this land and to maybe even reevaluate the use for this land. Currently, we have it as an industrial park. And the rules governing the industrial park, i.e. the covenants of the industrial park, may be prohibitive to what you as a board envision moving forward. So I think as a first step, the board may want to put on an upcoming agenda the restrictive covenants of the site, and just start a discussion about how and what you may envision coming to that site. I think with the casino coming, I think, and having an interchange right off 29, I think maybe the use may have changed, or the conceptual idea of the site may have changed. So I just encourage the board to look at those, look at the qualities of the industrial park, and also look at potential uses. And if the board would like me to, after that discussion, I can certainly engage whomever the board would like me to engage to help walk through that process.
Yeah, I believe it would be most helpful for us to see the covenants before we get into a discussion as far as the conceptual rendering, what we would like to see there. So is that okay with the board? We'll get that on the upcoming agenda to see the covenants or
absolutely
so we can read and look at those before we have that discussion. Okay. Next, we have a request from Milton. As we shared with the board, I think you were aware of the emails, Commissioner Jeffrey, myself, and Mr. Miller, we met with some of the board, Mayor Williams, and they were requesting some help through the American Rescue Plan Fund. And I'm going to ask her if she would like to just give us a quick brief. If you want to, you don't have to. We've seen the email. But if you would like to share anything before we discuss it.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for giving me this time to address this issue that we had at Milton. Milton, as you know, was incorporated in 1796. And we have been going along as a town doing well this year, I have to say. For the last years that I can remember, Milton has had to transfer funds from the general fund to the water sewer fund. The reason for that is because of the maintenance cost of our old infrastructure. We date back our fire hydrants, our water meters date back to the 1940s. And so when the ARP funds became available, and we haven't gotten ours yet, but they're supposedly in the mail to us. But it was, I was made aware that the county had gotten their allotment already. And so I wanted to reach out to the commissioners to see if there would be any way that the town of Milton would be able to receive some of these funds from the American Rescue Plan. I do realize that Yanceville has already been budgeted some funds from this American Rescue Plan. And with the maintenance being so high, that is what is causing our water sewer fund to always not make a profit. We break even this year, and that's a big part of that is due to a loan that's taken out in 2006, 2007. The town owes $450,000 for a sewage system that was put in at that time. Well, we have an outstanding bill every year in May that comes up that we're having to pay due to that, that loan that was taken out at that time. The loan is for 40 years, so I won't be able to see the end of it, and probably quite a few people in the town of Milton will not be able to see the end of it. We have raised our water rates. They were raised last year, and we did raise the property tax. And so for that reason, this year we have really done quite well in our water sewer as far as not having to transfer funds from the general fund. So we're really happy about that particular. But I hope that you'll find that you would be able to give the town of Milton some of the American Rescue Plan funds that you may have for not only the residents paying for county taxes as well as Milton taxes, but for the 1940 items of old infrastructure that we have. That is what is causing the high maintenance. If we can get ahead with replacing the fire hydrants, replacing meters, making them 21st century, then that would really put us into a good position. I know when I met with Chairman Owen and County Manager Brian Miller earlier, there was a group of us from Milton that met with them. We discussed the old infrastructure and we discussed the issues that Milton has. I do agree that having an engineer look at the old infrastructure at some point would be a nice scenario for the town of Milton. But right now, with the monies that you possibly may have available, I just want you to take that into consideration. Thank you. Any questions that you may have for me?
Ms. Williams, I have a question.
Yes,
Ms. Williams, this is Bill Carter.
Yes, sir.
I have a question concerning your water meters that you sent in. You sent in $130 each at 580. Standard 1/2 to 5/8 meter. The cost of them is usually between $50 and $57. What size meters are these that you've got in the quote?
Well, they're just a normal meter size. I'm not sure that I would be able to answer the exact size. I know that they do have 2 settings on them, which is required by the state, and that's what we would be interested in putting in, is what is required by the state. And the meters, we have replaced meters as we have been going along, meters and fire hydrants, and that's how we were able to come up with that cost particularly, because that is coming from our current budget as is happening. The well pump replacement, that was an estimate that I had put down. That is something that our well is working fine. There's no problem with our well pump, but we would need to have one on hand when and if this one would stop working. It is old. We're not sure exactly how old it is. It was before the water maintenance person has been there, and that's been 15 years. So that was the reason that that particular item was put on the items that we would need to have funded.
I have another question concerned, has the town of Milton asked the Rural Water Works Association to come in and conduct a rate study for you? I know they'll go around different towns and they'll come in and look at your financial situation, and they'll suggest how much you should be charging per 1,000 gallons for water, and maybe a user fee per month also. Have y'all considered doing that?
Yes, sir, we have. We have reached out to the Rural Water Association, and they have given us some direction on that. A lot of times when I've spoken with them, they want to raise the rates. Our problem with raising rates is that our population is declining to some degree. But not only that our population is declining, we have an elder population. A lot of our residents are with one income of Social Security. So we raise the rate, but we raise them at such a pace that we feel like people can't afford the rate, afford to pay for the water. Our basic rate right now in the town of Milton is $68, which was just raised. And that is with 2,000 gallons. And then we also raised the allowance, the overage, over that 2,000 gallons to 3.5 cents a gallon. So raising the rates is often what the state has told us that we needed to do. And we do realize that that's something that would help with the water funding, but with our existing population and with the age of our population, with the economic backgrounds of our population, we don't want to raise them to the extent that they wouldn't be able to pay, and they would suffer. The pandemic has really brought out a lot of the insecurities and problems that people have, not only with the economy, but with food insecurities. So we've been reaching out to the residents and trying to help them as much as we can during this whole pandemic time slot. Through the capital fund also is something that we did with the CARES Act funding. So the residents at this point in time are paid. We have their rates. We have one that is on a payment plan. And so we've made great strides in what we've done over this last couple of years, and that's been through the pandemic.
Is your water system self-supporting at this time? Do you have enough coming in to make expenses?
It is at this particular time. This is the first time that it has been maintained without borrowing from the general fund. So the steps we have taken have been successful. But if we could just get ahead by doing some of this replacing some of this old infrastructure, that would help with maintenance. That is our biggest cost is our maintenance, our water maintenance. And it's due to the old infrastructure. And we can't seem to get ahead because of the old infrastructure. We just replaced five fire hydrants. And you see the cost of that. And we replaced them because they were not working, they were broken. And we tried to get parts for them, well, there weren't parts for them. So therefore, we had to replace them with brand new fire hydrants, and we had to have a company come in and do that work for us. So this is the actual cost. We know that cost because we just had it done. And that was a huge undertaking for the town to come up with those funds. But we did it, and again, we have not had to transfer funds from the general fund this year. This is the first year in years that that's happened. So we are, what we're doing is working. And I know that the CARES Act funds that came in earlier was a huge benefit to us. It really brought our payments up from our residents. So that was very helpful. But if we could just get ahead by having some old infrastructure replaced, then I do believe that Milton would be self-sufficient and not have any, we still have issues because the sewage system was put in 2006 and 2007, and we're seeing those pumps and their life expectancy has hit the top. So we are finding that the pumps are having to be replaced. But the fire hydrants and the water meters, bringing them up to date and going with the well pump that were our 1940s would be so helpful to the town.
Are all your fire hydrants not working? Is some of your fire hydrants working, or all of them not working, or one?
Commissioner Carter, I have to tell you that they're all working now, because we replaced those five. So we had 5 brand new with their 21st century fire hydrants. And we're just hoping and praying that the other fire hydrants will continue to work. We have a great fire chief in Milton, and he informs me when things aren't looking right. So we're keeping it up.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, sir.
There's a picture of my understanding on the second round of funding, the ARC, the ARA, that portion of that was designated to go directly to municipality.
Yes, Commissioner Sharp, that's correct. So Milton Scale will receive $40,000 in 2 tranches, $20,000 first time, $20,000 approximately 12 months after that.
The second question is, does the request fall within the allowable uses of the ARA funding?
Yes, water and sewer infrastructure are allowable uses. I think Commissioner Owen, Commissioner Jeffries, and myself had a very productive meeting with Milton when we met. I think and I believe we laid out a plan for Milton that would help move through the process. You know, if you're dealing with old infrastructure and you're replacing end user equipment, you still have the bones of your system that's in jeopardy. And many times that's what's costly and can cause end user units to become damaged if the bones aren't maintained. So I have spoken with Brian Bradley, who's married, and he has he spoken to you yet?
He's reached out to me and I reached out to him.
Okay. So that process is underway to start a process where they can get to where Milton can get a strategic plan on how to tackle the infrastructure that they have available. After they get a plan, my recommendation to them was after they get a plan of attack, that they have an engineering study done that will identify costs and identify everything that needs to be done and then the steps that needs to be done. And at that point in time, there's grant money available from the state. In our conversation with Milton seemed to indicate that a lot of times they don't go after grant money because they can't come up with the matching funds, whether it be 10, 20, 30%, or whatever it costs to match the funding being given by the state. My suggestion was, after you go through the process and you apply for the grants and look for the grants, and you then it would be the appropriate time to look to the Board of Commissioners to receive some of that funding, because what may be $100,000 now or $200,000 now may turn into $1 million, $1.5 million, and that could provide some real infrastructure. So that's kind of the plan that I laid out for Milton moving forward in our meeting. I know Commissioner Owen and Commissioner Jeffries both asked some really good questions and gave some really valuable input. So I think we're moving towards that.
I guess just kind of in summary, I think that's a reasonable way to approach this, rather than just us determining $175,000 sounds good. There ought to be a structure to how that will be applied, what the long-term vision for that is. Certainly an aspect of that needs to be, if you make these modifications or replacements, what does that do specifically to the maintenance costs of lowering the overall cost of the system? And so we can have an ROI component to this as well. So I fully support the idea of tearing into this and really getting down to the details.
I think,
Just throwing it on.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think the one problem that as for the town of Milton, would be the cost of hiring someone, an engineer, to look at the situation. We don't have extra funds. We are able to pay what we do have, but I think that's something that we would have to see. And I don't know the cost. I haven't heard a cost yet of what that cost of hiring an engineer would be, to see what the infrastructure and the plan that Mr. Miller brought out. I understood having a strategic plan in place so that you're just not replacing. But I think we're dealing with the cost factor of even getting the plan in place, of how much will it cost. And I don't know that. He's put me in touch with Frank Radner. I've been in touch with him. I haven't heard back from him yet. But I think that's an issue that the town of Milton will have, just looking at that. So, maybe that's something else that we can come back to, and come back to you when that is more of a factor of the cost that we know. I just don't know what that cost would be. And I don't know that the town of Milton would be able to afford to have an engineer look at the whole infrastructure and put it into place. I mean, we have the main pipes going down streets that are 1940s and going to the meters or not, so the whole thing is old. It's old and would need to be looked at. But that is something that I can see how having that plan would be a good idea of moving forward.
I've always said if you don't have a map to tell you how to get to your destination, you'll never get there.
But that's exactly right. It's the cost of the map that you have to do that.
And I think
That's what I don't have.
I think it's a fair question to investigate, find out.
Yeah.
And I know that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say, sitting here listening to the presentation, one of the most important things, and Milton right now doesn't know how much water's come in, how much water's going out, because the meter's not working. They don't know how much a customer is using until they have a correct water meter that's working. So they really don't know how to charge a consumer till they get a water meter that is correctly operating, because they don't know how much water a customer is using. So I would say one of the first things they need to do is to replace the water meters so they have a better understanding how much usage each water customer is using. Now, whether we can help with the cost of that or what, but that's one of the first things you got to know. You got to know how much water a customer is using and how much to charge that customer, because you got operating expenses a month, electricity, and I know they have to pay a contract operator on a lab for the lab analysis. So to offset those expenses, they've got to know how much water is being used in the system. And the only way to do that is to replace the water meters with the water meters at each customer that's working.
Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the items that we discussed, and that she went into that fact about, and I was going to share with the board as well. But
so, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The part of the discussion that we had while we were building that I left out was after the initial assessment by Dewberry to come to how much would it cost to put this study together. We discussed while we were in Milton that there were probably grant funding agencies available. And I know there's grant funding agencies or grant funds available to the state. There's Piedmont Triad Regional Council, technical assistance grants. There's, and then there's our regular grant funding agencies that could help bridge that gap in getting the strategic plan for Milton put together. So, we'd also discussed that one.
And I know Mary will not want me to say this, but she expressly said that she would be grateful for
any help. The problem with the grants is that we're on this list, the UAL list, and to borrow or go for a grant, we have to go in front of this group of people, this commission, to see if we would be able to meet that grant amount. So if it's an 80-20 grant, which most grants are 80-20, they pay 80, we pay 20, then by getting that approval, then that may not come about. And the reasons for that is, yes, we have not had to borrow with the general fund, and I'm so proud of that. I keep saying that. I know you may not understand that, but to this loan, this $450,000 loan that Milton is strapped with is not going away. It's not going to go away. And that is one of the first things that we look at when we're paying our bills, is how we have to make sure we collect this amount of money every year and have that money in that budget item so that we can pay that bill and we don't default on the loan. We never want to default on the loan. So that's a big strength. Like I said, we're strapped because of that. And to go for a grant, which is a great idea, and there are grants, but anytime anyone has approached us for a grant, it's where we can come up with the money. And we need $100,000, we have to pay the 20% of that. We can't come up with that money. So that is, I appreciate Commissioner Carter saying that just the help from the meters would be so beneficial. You're exactly right, Commissioner Carter, as far as not knowing how much water that person actually is using. We have 10 meters right now that need to be replaced. And you see the cost of that. Well, we have to be sure that as we go through the maintenance, again, that's water, sewer, and that's the maintenance, and there are other items that need to be replaced maybe before that, just because we do get the basic rate for that meter. So we're in a dilemma, we're working it out, but any help is some help.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions or comments? Or suggestions?
Thank you.
And I just had a note to, Ms. Williams, Ms. Williams, and I kind of overestimated this. Your 130 water meters need replacing. You should be able to buy 130 water meters for $8,500. And you can contact Justin Chandler with Tanner Yancel through his supplier, and he can probably fix you up with that.
Okay, and you said to get in touch with the town municipal?
Get in touch with who, Commissioner Carter?
Do what?
Get in touch with who?
Well, I just figured on the high end, the cost of a water meter, but if she'll get with Justin Chandler with the Tanner Yancel, his supplier comes every Thursday, and they could talk with him about the cost of the meters and everything.
Thank you. Any other?
I guess this would be a question to ask Mr. Miller. Is there any corresponding program that helps like rural Castle County people on private homes that they're paying for out of their own pocket, or any kind of help like that was actually for their water system?
No.
Are we setting a precedent here where we put a double standard? We're going to be paying for Milton's water issues, but we expect everybody else in the county to pay for their own wells and their own piping, and we don't help them.
No, straightforward answer to your question, no, there's not. Water and sewer infrastructure projects are, water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure projects are part of allowable uses for ARP money. But straightforwardly answering your question, no, a private homeowner with a well would not be able to receive ARP funds to fix their well.
So municipality is capable of having those funds used for their needs, but a private well going out would qualify for helping the county to rectify their problems.
Well, I think what you're looking at is infrastructure, like infrastructure serving more than one household, infrastructure that serves a community. I don't necessarily think it has to be the municipality. I think it's water infrastructure that's recognized by the state as a water system.
Well, they have one main pump that pulls it out of the well, and there are individual pumps at different residents that bring it into that house and septic tank as well. So those pumps are for individual use. So why wouldn't a regular Castle County taxpayer be entitled to the same treatment?
Yeah, I can definitely look into that. You asked me whether or not I thought a well user would be eligible for ARP funds to fix their well. My answer is I don't believe so, but I can definitely look into that.
Just a quick point, Milton is a municipality, but with the state, they own a well water system. They're rated on the well water system. They have to have a well operator, licensed well operator, plus a distribution operator also for the distribution. And I'll go back to my main point. I don't know if the COVID money the county manager's more up to date on than I am, but I don't know if the COVID money could help or not, but their main priority right now is getting those water meters, replacing those water meters where they'll know how much to charge the water customer, so they'll know how much water is coming in each month. So they'll know, once they do that, they can get their rate charges taken care of and a user fee if they need to apply that, because the water system is an enterprise system. It's got to be self-supporting. You can't operate it off the general fund. The water system has to be self-supporting with the state.
Thank you. So what I would suggest to the board is that two things. Number one, the information that Commissioner Dickerson, you will search that. But I would also suggest that we have our county manager look at our ARP expenditures this year and see if there is any money at all we feel like we could spend, and get that information back to the board, and then the board will make a decision as to how we proceed, if we proceed. That's the goal. Well, thank you. All right, now we'll move on to action items, power line on the ground, easement, Brian Miller.
Commissioners, on April 1st, the sale of 8.5 acres in the Pelican Industrial Park was completed. The owner has begun developing the property, and Duke Energy has made the easement request for power to the property. If you look at your sheet or your agenda packet, you got the original purchase request. It's then followed up with the, is that right? No, if you look at your agenda packet, you've got the easement request. After the easement request, you have the plat that's recorded at the Register of Deeds. And after that, you have the original purchase request from Wells and West. So if you, so if you look at the aerial photograph, the blue line to the left of the road, to the left of the red line, is where the easement request is. I think there's, this was an economic development project. The land to the left of the road is most likely that the road that you see leads back into our water pump station. So it's highly unlikely that the land to the left is going to be developed in any way. I think there are some things that we need to consider as we move throughout the process, trying to determine whether this access should be approved or not. Occasionally, you'll have boards or entities that charge for these type of easements. I don't know that that's necessarily in an industrial park. What we want to, or what the county wants to do moving forward, I would say there's some conditions we can put on moving this or granting this easement. Some of those conditions might be if for any reason in the future, we need to do away with the easement, we're allowed to do that. If for any reason in the future, we needed to move the easement, that we allow the easement to move, but have them pay the relocation costs. Simply because this is a park that's under development. We don't necessarily know what's going to occur within this park right now. As I spoke with you about the conceptual plan, I think the board has a lot of fact finding and thinking to do about how we go about this. So I guess my recommendation to the board would be to approve the easement, but let the staff work together on some of these recommendations like I made. I just wouldn't want to hold up the economic development project that we have occurring now. And it was Duke Energy, not necessarily the landowner, that made this easement request.
Questions?
Generally speaking, if it was overhead easement, what would we do?
So, and that's a great point, Commissioner Hall. It could go two ways. If you have an overhead easement, they're running the line from power pole to the side of the building to another power pole. That could restrict traffic in and out to our water station or in and out to the property. So it may be better if one of those conditions was an underground easement rather than an overhead. And I think that's some of the things that with staff, you know, with county planner, we can work on those moving forward in our discussions with the developer.
Any other questions? Well,
Yeah, I don't have a problem, with easement, I guess the reason I ask is, generally speaking now, underground, power lines are more efficient, safer, and just better all around, better off to use. So it seems that we would probably want to do that. And my only thought would be, could we design this easement such that it probably won't get in the way in the near future?
Well, I think we probably could, but never knowing what's going to occur, never knowing, you know, at the point we're at now, what the next development may be that's wanting to utilize that space. I think just reserving the right to be able to move it in the future if we desire would probably be advisable.
any other questions? Comments? What's the pleasure of the board? We want to go ahead and grant the easement request with the conditions that the county manager has spoken about being added to that. Or do you want to put this off? I think we need to move on it, to be honest, but it's up to this board.
I'm like a motion to move on.
Okay, we'll have a motion second, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, of making this easement available? Aye. Aye. Yes. All right, next item is we have an offer to purchase 47 acres in Pelham Industrial.
Commissioners, you see that the Providence Industrial or Providence Development Group has made an offer to purchase 47 acres located within the Pelham Industrial site. They have presented the county with the 10% cash down payment. They're proposing $6,000 an acre. They'll make full payment within 30 days, business days from acceptance of the bid. So I'm happy to discuss the proposal with the board if that's what the board desires. It looks to be a phased development plan over 10 years. And there are several different aspects associated with the several different parts of the development.
What is the offer?
$6,000 an acre.
Didn't we just sell the parcel at 8,500 an acre?
Yes, 8.5 acres, you sold it at 8,000.
And this is a 10-year development plan.
That's correct.
That one starting out with a gas station and plans to eventually be park roads or something like that.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think we need to be weary about, that many acres that's got a 10-year plan on it. Number one, and number two, the price. It's too cheap. I just feel like that's a lot, if you look at that map and see what's left, basically, because this is not, it does not have actual drawn out. But you can see what's left, and there is an easement to that property in the back, by the way. But you can see the property that's left, kind of cut up in all kinds of ways. But I have a real problem of 10-year development plan, because my concern would be, we sell the property, he comes around and makes a huge profit later on the property.
It sounds more like property speculation than it does property development.
So how do we want to proceed with this? Offering some of the acreage at the price that we sold our previous
we need to be higher all the way around. We're giving that land away for our North Star economic development. But we are absolutely giving it away. It all. Especially on a plan like he's talking about, it ought to be $20,000 a day. That's what land generally goes for around here, to build a house or something under it. I understand this is an industrial park. But with a 10-year period or ever how long it's gonna be, $6,000, not mine.
Commissioner, if I may, maybe we could walk through the process, the conceptual process that I talked to and spoken to the board about. At the end of that conceptual process, reviewing the restrictive covenants, having a vision for what the Pella Industrial Park may look like in the next 5 to 10 years. You know, after we move through that process, if the board doesn't accept the offer now, you know, we can always reach back out to the Providence Development Group and engage their interest after the board's been through the process and maybe receive more information on the true value per acre.
That would be my recommendation, and I'll make a motion that we refuse the current offer for sale of 47 acres until such time later, if it wants to resubmit after we look at the code and look at the drawings and decide how we want to proceed. So my recommendation is not to approve this contract. We have a second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Gentlemen, each year at our NCACC, we're going to have it this year. There is a designation of a voting delegate. One person gets to vote items that are brought up through the association, as well as vote on one of the mine's going blank here. Those that run for office. Yeah, the slave officer. I talked to Commissioner Paul, who usually does it. I'm going to be there and asked to be there Saturday night, so I will be there Sunday at least. And I will do it, and he asked if that's okay with the board. I will be the voting delegate in that business meeting, which is on Saturday afternoon. Any objection to that?
Well, I move that we'll start trying to hold.
Okay, all those in favor? We also need to, I think we need an alternate. So Commissioner Hall, I will make a motion that Commissioner Hall will be alternate delegate. Motion and second, all in favor with that? Okay. So do you have this? Bunch. All right. Mr. Miller, are you helping?
Commissioners, I'm not going to read for you the 2.5 pages that I included in your agenda packet about Via Health. As many of you know, Cardinal Innovations has been our LME MCO for many years now. They provide mental health services throughout the county, substance abuse, addiction, those kind of things. For various reasons, Cardinal Innovations is merging with Via Health. Via Health being the lead entity in the merger, they will carry operations through after the merger is complete. We have with us tonight Brian Shuping from Via Health, and yes, he sat through this entire meeting. So if you have any questions for Mr. Shuping, he is here to answer those questions. However, what I would say is Via Health has met with DSS Director Diane Moorfield, and it is the recommendation of both Diane Moorfield and myself that we continue forward with Via Health as our LME MCO in the future. At which time, some point in the future, if the county chooses to disengage because lack of service or whatever the case may be, then we can follow that path in. But I will tell you that Via Health brought a very strong team to meet with the DSS director. Had a very productive meeting, and seems like they are genuine about providing care to the residents of the county. So I've spoken with the affected entities, and their recommendation as well as mine is moving forward with Via Health as our LPNCO.
Hey, gentlemen, you have the information in your packet. Are there any questions or discussion on this? And with pleasure, pleasure forward.
Move that we continue our relationship with transition, our relationship with government, with the purchasing entity by.
I'll second that. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. County manager, please.
Yeah, Commissioners, I had 4 updates for you. And I had toyed around with the idea of putting vehicles on the agenda to talk to you about vehicles in, and I decided better. So what I've done is I've set at your desk a vehicle listing of what was approved for us to move forward with this year and what was not approved. As you heard, the representative for Enterprise, Chrissy Huss, say at the last meeting she attended, was that timeframe for ordering opens in August. And it's really good for maybe a week, 2 weeks because of production of new vehicles. So I wanted you all to be aware of what you had included, what you had not included. I don't think you've seen a breakdown of that. So I wanted to make sure you had it. And that's my update on vehicles rather than having another big discussion about vehicles. Are there any questions about vehicles? Good. All right. So I want to put on the board's radar that we are, the federal government is finishing up the census. And us being a county that elects commissioners by district, it doesn't mean to some degree that we need to at least evaluate the census data that we receive, which we're slated to receive in September or October. And we need to evaluate the redistricting process. The statute says basically that we've got to have each commissioner elected by a district needs to have the same or thereabouts number of people in the districts. So if there's any, wide population shifts, the board may want to look at redistricting. So what I've done thus far is, as I said, follow me on the timeline here. The information we expect to get to us in September, October. The filing for commissioner districts and for Board of Education districts, they begin in early December, the 2nd or the 4th, I believe. So between October, November, or September, October, we have to move through very quickly any process that we want to go through. I've spoken with the Piedmont Triad Regional Council to help us evaluate the raw census data that it'll probably be given to us in raw format in September, maybe a little bit more complete in October, but to help us start interpreting the raw data that we get so the board can get a jump on anything that may or may not need to be done. Are there any questions about redistricting? Okay, so next update I have for you is, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but sometimes, you've heard the expression living on borrowed time, right? The board authorized a repair to the solid waste loader 2 years ago, I think it's 2 years ago. They approved a repair to solid waste. Well, the loader was purchased, I think in 2011. And it was purchased used at that time for about $30,000. Anyway, the repair to the loader cost about $30,000. The loader is now broken down again. It seems that the engine may have locked up. It's locked up in a very precarious position where the arm is also hanging over the apron. So we're probably looking at least $30,000 repair bill if the board chooses to repair it. The same problem, which was the plate that allows the loader to spin around, also seems to be showing some additional wear. So if we do the repair, we may be back in the same situation in 6 months, a year, or 2 years that we're in now. So I wanted to make the board aware of this. I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight. I want to make that clear. The reason being is if I asked you to buy a new loader tonight, it would still take us 120, 130 days to get a loader in. So my suggestion to the board would be we use the money that's already allocated in the solid waste budget to rent some equipment, to get the rental equipment in and go through the process so solid waste can continue to operate. And then at the next meeting, the board evaluate bids and pricing on loaders. And maybe loaders is not the correct terminology. It's wheeled excavators, I think is a more appropriate terminology for it. But I'd like the board to be able to make an informed decision rather than the knee-jerk decision tonight. So we're going to have to rent equipment either way. So I think we should probably go ahead and rent the equipment and move forward, and the board can evaluate the bids later on.
When you're looking at that, so far as getting another loader, look at a lease on a loader.
We looked at, so far, we looked on at a three-year, 5-year lease, that at the end of that lease, equipment's coming back in, we're without a loader. We've also looked at a 5-7-year lease, at which at the end of the lease, we can purchase the loader for $1 if we see fit. So we started looking at that internally. I don't think we're quite ready to present anything to the board. And I didn't want to spring anything on you tonight as a board and say, hey, can we buy a loader or wheeled excavator? I think you need time to evaluate your options. Are there any additional questions? Okay. So
I would assume the board will proceed with running because we gotta have something, or they're gonna shut down.
Yeah, okay, so we'll move forward. So last but not least, or maybe it is least, the 2 bushes that stand at the entrance of the gate to the main entrance of the courthouse, those bushes are old and overgrown and have become unsightly and hard to manage. I've spoken with the horticulture club, the folks that maintain the square and the grounds inside the courthouse area. And I asked them for a recommendation on what to do with those 2 shrubs. And they agreed wholeheartedly that we remove those. They do not at this point in time have a recommendation on what we do, whether we just plant grass back and replace that shrubbery with something different. But they were fairly adamant that their recommendation would be that we remove those two shrubs. They have poison oak or poison ivy growing up through them and various other types of things growing through them. Anyway, they're fairly unsightly and hard to manage. So my recommendation to the board would be we remove those, plant them in grass and wait, maybe not plant them in grass right now, but maintain them. And look to the horticulture club to give us some direction on maybe what they think is appropriate moving forward. Come back before the board and the board would take some action on it.
Is there any problem with moving those? Got no objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I got. I'm happy to answer any questions the board of commissioners may have.
Okay, commissioner comments, anybody? Any comments for tonight? Okay. Any announcements of upcoming events?
I have two. I just like to point out that the library is going to host 3 North Carolina Women's History programs, beginning the 15th, 25th, and October 4th through 8th. Check out the Memorial Public Library for more information on the programs. There is a very special event and scheduled for the same day as the hoedown. The library director, the library or the staff of the library can give you a lot more detailed information. So I would just ask if you're interested, visit the Memorial Public Library website or call directly. And they're also conducting, the Friends of the Library is conducting the bake sale Thursday, July 29th from 4 to 6:30 p.m. and a used book sale August 16th to 20th at the Memorial Library. And as part of the used book sale, I'll just point out to the board that there was a resolution included in the budget packets. When you approve the budget, you approve the resolution for the library book sale. For the Friends of the Library, the donation to the Friends of the Library. So just don't look into that.
Thank you, thank you. Nothing else, I think a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Miller, make sure that Mr. President is here at the next meeting for us to discuss the situation with him.
Yeah, I'll definitely speak to our candidate.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Mr. Farrell to address it.
I forgot it wrong.
I'm not sure it's an issue for closed session number 1, but.
Yeah, so part of what you hit on and what you asked for is a legal analysis and my legal advice concerning potentially moving the monuments from the court square. And I think due to the statute that you heard a little bit about tonight, there's certainly an ability for me to provide you with legal advice concerning that aspect of the project. Now, I also heard some questions about cost and some other matters, some other policy matters, which aren't appropriate for closed session, of course. So what we can talk about in closed session, what I can offer you is legal advice concerning, my opinion about the legal matters associated with the removal, but not the policy questions that surround the same.
Basically, what I would hear is the legal part of, since the other attorney brought up the things that he brought before I make any kind of decision, I'll hear some more legal facts.
And I think what hearing is we would like you first.
Yeah, I'd like to do your first.
Right, and you heard some of what he had to say was, of legal concern, and some of it was more of a policy matter. But I'll certainly be willing to provide you with my legal advice in closed session if that's what you need.
That's what I want. Okay. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn in a second. We have a second. All in favor, aye. Aye. We now set adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.